you want to give yourself an introduction, George?
Hi, everyone. I'm George. Yeah, so I've got a background originally as a developer. A lot of passed through data, ended up at InfoSec somehow, and now back to data, apparently.
Okay, yeah. So, first one we're going to talk about is choosing the best route to the peak. And the clever people at MIT came up with 3 terms for how to monetize your data. Selling data is the default position that everyone seems to go to of, oh, we're going to monetize it, we're going to sell it. And it's not as easy as that. Improvements, so that's more of a optimization. So using your business processes to look for opportunities to use data to drive actionable insight, which can drive efficiencies and also drive, hopefully, additional profit. And then wrapping data, which is a concept of trying to combine data with your products and having that as an additional feature that you can add more value from to your clients, which obviously turns into profit, hopefully. And right, so the improvement route. So, and you can't improve something unless you know what you're improving. So I always like to say it's always starting with business processes. And I think it's something that is an afterthought many times, and you see many large data transformations. They go through a long process of defining the business processes for each part of the business, but they became static. You know, they're never updated and maintained, and they probably don't always reflect the organization structure that you have nowadays. So understanding your business processes, even though it's probably not the most fun part to do of a data project, but it's essential for you to be able to identify areas that you can use data to drive efficiencies from onboarding, for your sales processes, for your marketing processes. So, yeah, always starting with the business processes. And I think data should be embedded into every single one of those decisions. So actually having those business processes and understanding what data is needed to support that business process, capturing that can help you later on with the associated data modeling, the associated AI and ML that you may want to run on it, or any insight that it can provide you that you can make decisions that will have a positive effect on your business. And it doesn't stop there. So once you've done it once, the world moves on, the organization changes, mergers happen. So always going back and looking and looking to improve in an iterative approach. Our work is never done, you know, in the data world, because everything keeps changing. And I think, yeah, aligning the data-driven improvements to business goals. So and we always talk about data strategies, and I think the problem is that data strategy out of business strategy is useless. So going back to that technology beauty pageant sort of approach, you can build the best data platform in the world with the fastest pipelines that no one ever uses. So really making sure that what you're doing has a purpose, and what you're doing is actually driving your business objectives and your business strategy. Because yeah, we're here to serve the business, and I think that sometimes living in our little data world, we forget that you know, we've got customers out there that are actually that we need to service, and yeah, having anything that's driving efficiencies with your customers is going to provide that revenue growth. So, the sales route. So, your CEO, he goes down to the golf course, or he's maybe skiing on the slopes. He's talking to his other CEO peers, and he says, "Well, okay, I want to monetize my data." And I go, "Okay, well, that's great. How are we going to do that? I'm going to hire a CDO." Okay, that's not the answer that's not the solution to the problem. It may be a vehicle to help with that, but you can't just assume that just going and getting a CDO is going to solve all your problems. Especially, you've seen CDOs in the org structure. Sometimes they don't actually get given the ability to actually make the changes required to actually drive that. They don't have they don't always have a seat at the table. Sometimes they're having to go to the CIO to go and get the budget, or the CTO to get the budget. So, yeah, it's not as easy as it seems. And I think some things you need to consider when looking to see if you could even sell your data, because data in a raw form is not valuable. In fact, it's probably a liability, because you've got to keep the storage, you've got to maintain it, you've got to put the security on it. But yeah, it's not doesn't become valuable until you actually link it to your business use cases and the metadata that's associated with it as well to give it the context. Context is king. And I think uniqueness. So everyone's got their own data, but how useful is it to anyone else? You know, and making sure that if you're going to go sell your data, is it actually going to benefit that revenue line? Is it actually going to benefit any negative effects you may have by selling this data to other people? Because now either your competitors or alternative will actually have the same data you've got. So that may have a negative effect actually on the ability to get value from it, because you've actually reduced the profit you're making from other areas because other people are becoming more competitive, having a better competitive advantage as yourself. Timeliness, which I don't know how we're doing for time, but timeliness, it's the data when it's used, it needs to be there at the right time with associated quality as well, because you need to make decisions at the point that data arrives. So having historical views of data, and I think maybe there's some people that sell data out there, you give that data to someone, you don't know actually when it was collected. You don't know if it's actually been corrected on that journey or accurate at the time it was taken. So historical data sets, you need to have that trust factor built into it as well. And the context, as I said, context is king. Without a good data modeling, which we'll be covering at some point, I'm not sure if Joe's here yet, but that's one of his favorite subjects. Having that modeled data that allows you to use the data easily, consume it easily, and actually provide the business context to the users that are using it. And not all businesses not each department in a company will talk the same business language. So you need to have a taxonomies or different business terminology that will relate to the individuals that are using it. So that's the next one.
Wrapping.
That's you.
Where are my product people at? Yeah. So I mean, we're now in a world where people are taking their data and they're trying to stick it into their products as fast as possible, and that requires real integration. A lot of times we're being asked to just take the data and then do something with it, and at the moment that you're trying to stick it into the product, it's kind of hard, right? So really, when you're trying to enhance these products, things like smart tractors need data, real-time fraud detection needs data. And the faster that you can do it with more accurate data, like you were saying, it's quite important. What's going to happen is that friction. It's not just going to be one place. It's not just the moment you go use it. The friction is an accumulation of a lot of little problems that you have across your organization that by the time that you go to try to get your data into your product, you're trying to unstick one thing. You call it the data problem, but actually it's a lot of like little organizational problems that you're trying to fix. And this is going to depend on making sure that your process is aligned across your organization. So not just getting your data people to do data stuff, but getting your data people to talk to your product people, to talk to your security people. I worked on one program where what we got to do was solve their problem by we took all of their data movement problems. We created a real-time event management system. For that event management system, what we had to do was take
What that was? Well, while you think of that, I'll just add a bit more about the friction. Friction, I like to use the term, it's the time, complexity, and effort to perform an activity. And I think if you understand the time, complexity, and effort to do something, you can actually understand how much it's slowing you down. So friction obviously slows you down. So looking at that, and not everything needs to be optimized, and it's working out what needs to be optimized in the right time to reduce the friction in the things that matter. I think that, for example, your infrastructure, you only have to set that up once. Yeah, hopefully. Well, it doesn't change as frequently. That may be like every 6 months you need to put in some new compute. Well, maybe monthly, but it's not as if it's a daily activity. So the time it takes to go and do that monthly, it may not be worth, use my term again, the juice is not worth the squeeze. It's not worth automating that activity if you're only doing it every month and you're going to save yourself 5 hours a month. It could be the greatest technology piece of a pipeline you've built or automation you've built, but it doesn't really add the value associated to that activity. So really understanding what to improve and when to improve it is essential. Do you remember a bit now?
Yeah. So we were moving all this data, and it was very difficult for everybody to understand where the problem was coming from. What we had to do in the end was build this test pipeline for the product people. The product people, what they were able to do was test whether they were going to be able to measure the success of the product right up front. So every time they did a test, it would go to the test pipeline. From the test pipeline, other people were using the same test pipeline. What they could understand then was, am I going to mess up the entire data model for everybody? Instead of a bunch of different people having different data models, if your data people and your product people and your data science people, if you've done a good job with your organization of bringing it all together, and they're all working together, then at the end, instead of having a bunch of data move through your organization and you're wondering how it got from one place to the other, they're all making little changes a little bit, disrupting everything a little bit, and then at the end, it's not one big thing that breaks.
Cool. All right. Well, the next one is this one. Okay. What are you going to see on this journey? And I like to use this term. It links quite nicely to slopes as well. Is that enrichment of data happens in many ways, and you can have wider data, adding more attributes to that data that provides more value to that data because you've looked up either geolocation, you've looked up weather location at a particular point in time. So adding attributes will make wider, can add that value. Going back to selling your data, selling the data on its own is probably not worth too much, but with that enrichment and starting with enrichment by adding attributes that can be used for decision making, by combining different data sets, can actually provide more value than you would have got from the data just on its own. So nice wider runs on your way down. It's you can carve better on the way down. Longer, it's the history. If you're doing year-on-year analysis or looking to compare to how things have done over time, and maybe taking out any outliers of the the COVID era, that probably wasn't actually a good to compare year-on-year. So having that history to give you the trends is really important as well. And deeper. So deeper could be combining different data sets from different locations. So we've done a lot of work for some supermarkets in the UK, and many of them have tried to have initiatives to collect lots of data from each of the different supermarkets to put that into the same place, which gives you more understanding of consumer activities and consumer trends. Whereas if you just had the data on your own is worth so much, but if you're able to get 80–90% of the traffic for a particular industry, it's going to be worth much more. But back to that point I said earlier, that advantage could be given to other people as well. So it may not be advantage to yourself as a company to go and give your data away. So it's working out. If you've got more data than other people, then maybe it's better to go and take theirs because they don't get yours. Whereas maybe the people that haven't got a little bit of data, they're more interested in getting the larger piece that gets that complete picture. And even though I haven't got it on here, I think there's probably another layer to this, which is like geospatial or alternative data. And I know I think George in the market, George out there somewhere, yeah. So alternative data specialist. Having those layers of data that you can actually put on top of that. That could be, we saw it recently with looking at the fires in the US. It was looking at, okay, how quickly does that recover? What is the area that fire was? But then they were looking at UV lights as well as different. There's the other layers of different satellite images that actually provided more context to that data. By laying that on top of it, you can actually get a better idea of maybe the environmental impacts of those issues. Back to you.
Yeah, back to governance. Yeah.
The G word.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot. Going back to what we were saying about products, right? So you're trying to get the stuff out the door. One of the biggest issues that you're going to have is that once you have anything good, all the security people show up, all the governance people show up, and usually they show up way too late by the time you're trying to get something out the door. And so governance, privacy, these things are infosec. They're all so tightly coupled, and a lot of times nobody can really explain this stuff to you. You're just trying to get some data from here to there. I've worked with startups. What they do is they're being asked to do a lot of infosec stuff, a lot of governance stuff. They're usually pushing it out as far as they can. It's very expensive to do. And then when they hit that scale-up stage, usually what they've done is they've accumulated a lot of technical debt, a lot of organizational debt. Somebody's invested in them, and you've got all this money that effectively that you've put aside that you haven't spent yet, and that's coming. On the other side, with the large enterprises, we've all experienced this. Like things, it's just glacial. I just worked on a project. It took like 6 weeks to onboard with a bank. If your competitors are waiting or not waiting 6 weeks, that's money you've lost. That's time you've lost. What else? Oops.
Yeah. Oh, you're going too far. Whoa! That's it. No, we missed a slide.
Sorry.
Wait a journey.
No,
oh, you do the clicker. Oh, no, which one? Oh, we go. Do the click. Here we go. So here we go.
Yeah.
The False Summit. That's yours again.
Yeah. So then, fine. You get past the governance people. You build something. You try to get it into production. And now what we're doing is we're living in a world where product people, data science people especially, we're doing AI, we're doing ML. They're not software developers. Data people aren't software developers. And we're fighting this weird little battle. I don't know if it's a battle, but we're definitely trying to solve a problem right now where you're trying to get these things that they're really great, these analytics, these little data products, and then you put them in front of somebody and they become useful. And then once something becomes useful, a lot of people want to use it. And once a lot of people want to use it, you have to think about operations. And that's when everything comes to a halt all of a sudden. Nobody owns it. Who's going to pay for it? All of these issues are going to then, along the way, the other thing you've probably done is you've taken a lot of shortcuts because nobody really knew what it was going to look like when you went into production. So we said, we're going to do this temporarily. We're going to do this for now. We're going to bypass these rules. And now the thing is useful. And you've created all of these problems for your organization along the way. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think I'm sharing this one with you. So you don't always have to get to the top of the mountain to go and enjoy the journey down, or actually get the value from that run. So if each time you just get a little bit further towards that summit, I use the term the force multiplier effect. If you're able to layer up these activities, that each of those activities are worth more than the sum of the individuals, each time you're going to get further up that mountain. And don't always go and try and. I've tried as well, hiking to the top at 11,000 foot. It's not easy unless you're prepared for it, because it's hard to breathe up there. But yeah, so you don't doing that gradually, doing that iteratively, is gonna get you to that AI Nevada that we're all heading towards. That we've got the budget for at the moment. That's what they're giving it for, but. You'd actually got to do all the foundations and do those earlier runs to build up that knowledge, that experience, the failures as well. Failing halfway down the mountains is not going to be a lot less not as bad as actually failing at the top of the mountain. So getting those processes iteratively improved over time will get you that AI payoff. I think skipping the foundations. Prototypes are great, but you build a house on sand, it's going to sink. So, or build a castle on sand, it's going to sink. So, making sure you've got the right stable foundations at the right time in the right order will enable you to get to that summit. And the true value comes on AI built on a well-structured, scalable data. Going back to that data modeling thing, the lost art of data modeling. The data. we've had situations where just the one big table, everyone goes in there and they probably 3 versions of that same big table because one department wanted a new column and the other one didn't. You're just building that large mess of technical debt that.
Yeah, but I think it's also just being aware that this stuff is happening underneath, knowing that all of these problems like the InfoSec, the shadow IT, knowing that these are problems that you're creating a little bit along, your whole organization is doing this along the way. If you're aware of that, and you're talking to your leadership about it every time it happens and everybody's having the same conversations, I think little by little, what we're going to do is fix these problems as an industry. Because right now, these are industry-wide problems, right? It doesn't matter who I talk to in what space. All of this stuff is happening. Everybody's trying to do AI. I'm working with AI right now, deploying it into banks. And all the data problems that we all live as an industry are really like the problems to solve.
Yeah, so I think we're 2 minutes over. Thank you. So this is an intro to today's session, so I hope you found that useful. And Nadeem, I think, is next, is he? Right, okay. Yep.